Morning. Hi, it's good to be here, and I have to say straight away I'm very flattered to be invited, but also to be on the stand or to speak to you with my previous practice educator. Siobhan was my practice educator in the 90s, even though she only looked about 12, and so I owe the start of my career to her. I think, as introduced, I'm Sue Kemp from the British Association of Social Workers, and I've been a social worker for over 20 years, mainly in children and families, a bit of a spelling complaints for a year, which was generic and very interesting. So I'm here not with all the answers, not with all the information, but hopefully with something that you will hopefully find useful, especially if I put my own slides on. Where are they? Thank you, Debbie. Sorry about that. I do apologise. Okay. It's because I can't I can see that. Are you down there, Andrew? Oh, sorry, Right, I do apologise. Technology. Okay, so it's funny when I go to see students, I always say to them, when I first meet them, I go around lots of universities, are you proud to be on this course? Are you proud to be a social worker? Now I'm presuming that a lot of you in here are experienced social workers. If I ask anybody here, are you proud to be a social worker today?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, are you supposed to one person supposed to put their hand up so I can give them a prize? So let's see, who's proud to be a social worker today? Let's have it. That's fantastic, that's great. There's at least half of you. How many students have we got here? Yeah, sort of 40. And have we got social workers from both adults and children services? Or yeah, good. Okay, so certainly we know the audience. Okay, I'm going to gabble through this. I'm going to say, ask me, put your hand up, shout, anything. This is about gaining information from me. We'll have some questions hopefully at the end, but we're just going to get through this information sharing, we'll call it. I'm looking particularly at where we are now as regards to standards and to what's expected from you as social workers and what's going to be expected of you. It's quite a sort of heavy presentation conversation, but that's why I want you to interject. And if there's anything that we don't understand or want to know more, please ask. The first thing I have to do, though, is to tell you about, use your clicker. Oh, this is what I'm going to talk about, sorry. What I'm going to start with is telling you about BASWA. BASWA now is the only professional association that we have. We're growing by the day, as you can imagine, very sadly with the college closing. And we'll talk briefly about that. I'm going to talk about the HCPC review of standards. I've just sent in a consultation document from our members to a review of the standards, even though we know that the future is that regulation won't stay with HCPC. I'm also going to talk about the PCF, people asking us what's happening with the PCF, so I'm going to be talking about that and want some help from you. I'm also going to talk about the knowledge skills statements briefly, and the announcement over a year ago from the Chief Social Workers and how these are embedded in your practice and the future of that. Nikki Morgan announcements, and the accreditation, which you, I'm sure, have all heard about, approved child and family practitioner, which we know will be the start of a different angle from our profession, and we think it's not only going to be in children's, it's probably going to move to adults. So. And finally, a most significant piece of legislation, I can't say it enough, I hope I've got time to go through this, is the Children's Social Work Bill. Anybody heard of it? It's out at the moment in a bill form. Extremely important for our profession, okay? So, I'll move that, okay? So, just briefly, I presume, who knows about BASWA? I've got to introduce you, fantastic. It's quite interesting because when I first started with BASWA about 6 years ago, there was a really active Oxford branch. And one of our big emphases at the moment is that social workers need support from each other, and we are launching branches all over the country. All we need is a motivated, dedicated person that wants to take it forward, and we will support it in whatever way, by telling members, promoting it, anything. So we've just had a recent Liverpool, Manchester, There's one trying in Portsmouth, Jersey. You know, there are branches springing up everywhere looking to support. So we've existed since, we've got 20,000 members, and we've existed since 1971. We say that we're democratic because we've got no central control. Our financing is from membership money predominantly. There's no money from government or any other agencies that would influence our decision making. We think we're becoming much better at being a strong voice in the media. We've got a new chief executive, Ruth Allen, who is very passionate about social work, whether anybody's seen her or heard her. She's brilliant, I think. A campaigning organisation, and we offer support, which is significantly important. We offer support through advice and representation, we always have. So if anybody joins and has a problem with anything at work related to their work situation, practice, etc., they can ring up and they will get a social worker at the end of the phone, so they'll know the situation. We've now developed the Social Work Union, which is a recognised union, and that is growing, and that's an addition, side element to the BASWA Professional Association. So just want to rush through this, telling you about BASWA, which you probably know. We've developed a vision for the next few years. That's our 2020 vision. And I just wanted to say this is our mandate and this is what we hope. Now, I'll be honest, people have questioned, especially over the years I've been here, about what we're doing, how are we the voice, you know, this sort of thing. I had a really interesting conversation with a principal social worker on Friday at a meeting, and he was saying, you're not really doing anything, you're not shouting enough, etc., etc. Well, join us and help us do that. It's the members that run our organisation, so I need to say that. So for social work, we'll ensure that the profession retains ownership of its values, ethics, knowledge, education, and we have to stop there and stress values and ethics. Just remember that when we go through the next few slides. Knowledge, education and practice, and we will defend, develop and strengthen social work as a unique profession rooted in social justice and respect for human dignity and worth. It is an essential profession. Social workers, we will provide professional advice, support for practice, training and development opportunities, and represent and defend social workers individually and collectively. And we really, you know, that is our vision. So so that was just an introduction to BASWA. What do we have to do? So what expectations are there from us as social workers? And I'm going to say very proud to class myself as a social worker. I do practice as well. It's my video now. This is just to really wake you up. Not wake you up, I suppose you're full of beans, aren't you? I just thought this was humorous, and it's... And I just see this as the social worker today. Just to present that because I feel that that's the way we are. We have
escape.
We have a number of hurdles to get across, and I wanted to show this presentation as that sort of concept, that they're hurdles. I think people might in government, if Isabel Trowler was here or Lynn, would say that perhaps you're portraying this future as quite negative, so it's interesting to see what you think about this. But I thought, no, we're here with hurdles. So to be a social worker now, we have to qualify. We have a number of different routes, and I'm not going to go through those thinking that Siobhan might mention those, but you know that we have the university setups where they still have the bachelor and the master's routes, the undergraduate and postgraduate, which are now, the funding is reduced, and it is obvious that the bursaries will eventually go. I don't frighten students here because that'll be fine for them, but the students that have a bursary will be okay, but there will be future where it will be dependent, I think, on loans. There is discussion about this, and it's sort of not a blanket approach, but the financial situation, it is pretty doom and gloom, and it'd be like nurses who now have to pay for their own courses. Alongside that, we've seen fast-track courses, and BASWA has said that we're anxious and we're monitoring those courses, especially ones like Frontline, which is run as a private I don't know, it's got some charitable trust, but it's mostly private, and it's seen as high academic achievement on a postgraduate qualification or a degree qualification before you can enter that, but you are funded and supported. And then there's the other options. We've just got a new one, Think Ahead, for the adults. Step Up's been running, I think it's on year 4 cohorts, so you know there are different fast track routes, and I'm not here to go into those particularly. If you want to know about them, Siobhan particularly and myself can talk about those. So I wanted to talk about standards because it's really getting complicated, and I know people have said, well, you know, what's happening with the PCF, what's happening with HCPC. So I tried to portray this as, and I didn't, you know, just to say that the HCPC, you have to meet those standards to be registered. You have to be, call yourself a social worker, you have to meet those standards. Those standards have just been reviewed, and I felt that the process that HCPC personally went through was very democratic. They promoted their consultation. You could do it individually online, respond to it. You could respond as groups. They had workshops, setting reviews of the standards. But I remember thinking that initially that was maybe predominantly to do with the new formats from the KSS. So the HCPC's there. We have to have that. We have to meet those requirements. There is, as we will talk about in a bit, the vision that this is going to go and we're going to be regulated by another organisation. But at the present time, we are still regulated by HCPC. Shout out, it's renewal time this year, so everybody needs to make sure that they are up to date with, I've got to say I am, up to date with maintaining their diary and maintaining their learning evidence. It doesn't have to be about attending, it's about learning. Basware can help you with that as well, but it is the 2-year cycle now, as we'll go over. And of course, on top of that, so I think that the PCF, and we'll talk about that, is the overall arching framework. And then we've had the announcement from the chief social workers that they want knowledge skills statements for you to meet those to show that you can actually do the social work job to a high standard. So they're on top of the PCF, that's how we see it. And I know that lots of organisations, both in education, learning and development, leads, etc., have been spending time trying to map those together to help students and to help ASYs, etc., go through the process. So the HCPC, just to say, they only became our regulators in 2012. You all know that they regulate other professions besides ourselves. They don't regulate students. You have to be a qualified social worker to register. They have generic standards and they have specific social work standards. And for instance, I haven't gone into all the details on the review. They were looking about strengthening leadership as a standard, which is, you know, we have no issue with it. The review of the standards, there's nothing there that alarms Basware or concerns. We've just given constructive feedback. Every 2 years is registration renewal. And as I say, the standards are presently being reviewed. And it's quite interesting off the record that they didn't know about the announcement from Nicky Morgan, who went to a day at the day after the announcement of Nicky Morgan, and the HCPC were not aware that they weren't going to be regulating our profession in the future. But that's off the record. Okay, so the professional capabilities framework. I'm not going to be negative, I'm going to try and be positive as well. Professional capabilities framework, right. Who knows this? Who recognises this rather, this is quite an old-fashioned image of it now. Who's used it? We're going to fill a questionnaire in a minute if that's okay with you, but I just wanted to say something about it. So it's a generic framework for all social workers in all settings at all levels. It sets the professional standards for social workers' careers at all levels. Has 9 domains linked to 9 levels from beginning social work to strategic leadership. And yes, it was made in 2010, and yes, it is a little bit, maybe a little bit aged, or there may be some need for some revision. It was aimed to provide a common language to describe capabilities. The big thing about the PCF It recognises that we need values and ethics. It recognises we don't just need to be able to tick box. We need to be able to think. We need to be able to do, a wide range of different things. And the most significant thing about this, which I want you to hold on to, is this was developed by social workers. This was the social work task force that was set up by Ireland Munro. And it was the actual reform board that looked at this with stakeholders, with service users, with social workers, with students, with directors, and everybody got together and designed this. So it's owned by social workers. And I think that's why Baz was pleased to, it's on the next slide, pleased to have it from the college, who unfortunately on closure were able to continue. So they were commissioned to do a review by the government, I've just pointed out by the government, because to make sure that the PCF was still fit for practice. So they did a review, and we felt, so I put this in because I think it's relevant, that they were looking at this review now at the same time as the knowledge skills statements coming into action. So we were saying, is this why we're looking at the PCF review now? But of course that wasn't openly said. It was just the issue that had been there since 2010 and needed updating. And the college suddenly closed, and it was sad because their conclusion and implementation, they concluded their review, but couldn't implement the review. So that was all passed to BASWA. And I put this quote: there was a unanimous message that the PCF brings many benefits to social work, and there's no doubt that it should remain in the future. And I think we were all pleasantly surprised that there was very little expected, or very little was seen to need significant change within the PCF. It's taken a long time to embed it. It's a long time for people to use it as a tool, and we know that, ranging from HR through to students, through to managers with appraisal, all sorts of different avenues they're using the PCF. I pulled out, there was a few recommendations, but most of them were, I would say, quite small. One of the things is about the pictorial presentation, and we've changed that and we've adapted that on our website, so it's available on the website. But things like we had, there's an app that the college had, which is really useful, and we just at this stage, it's gone on and on for ages about negotiating with both Apple and Android services to modify that app and use that so that you can all have that. So we are still pursuing this. Our intention is to continue with the PCF and build it stronger. We're having stakeholder meetings and there'll be involvement. I'm just going to say that for yourselves. So, but they did say the PCF level descriptors should be improved, and that was really good because that's taking on things like emphasising the role of AMPs, practice educators, best interest assessors, those sorts of key specialist services as social workers needed to be emphasised and strengthened, and I don't think we had an issue with that. And again, Domain 9 about the professional leadership should provide a better definition of leadership, relate to knowledge and skills statements for practice leaders and practice supervisors. Again, hold on to those terms because we'll talk about that in a minute. So, the review conclusion from the college was, this review marks the first step in wider discussion as to the future of the PCF and helps shape the next stages in its development. It's been legally transferred and we've revised the visual presentation, and we're our new chief exec is very keen, and we apologise for the delay that all this has taken. We are very keen to look at it in more detail to make sure that it is fit for practice and make sure it's good for all social workers everywhere. If people aren't using it, if people don't want it, it's something to look at, and we have to accept that. We are not going to do another review, but we have a questionnaire on the table. Can you just take 2 minutes to do this with me? And I'm going to say it out verbally. So you tick box. If you don't want to, of course, don't do it. So there's a BASWA document there, very quickly. It takes 2 seconds just to tick boxes, and we're going to go through it now because I've not been able to see it.
Will I be spare copies anyway?
Yes, certainly. There are here. Oh. This is only an anonymous idea. I've done it at 2 other venues, one with all learning and development leads and one with a mixed audience. So this will be really good. This is another opportunity. Right, so do you use the PCF approximately? On a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly, less frequent, specific tasks, or never? You know, if you don't use it, please tick it. Are you using the PCF for social work progression, identifying career pathways, assessing student progress, measuring ASYE success, planning CPD training as a recruitment tool, or none of the above? Number 3, do you use the PCF and KSS together as complementary tools, separately, only PCF, only KSS, or neither? Number 4, do you have a lead professional responsible for the PCF? It's been a really interesting one actually. Yes, no, or don't know. Has the PCF been central to your professional development? Yes, no, don't know. Do you believe the PCF has improved outcomes for service users? Yes, no, or don't know. If you've got any comments, you know, on that box, if you've got an example, that's good, or you want to go back to it later, or any comments about the PCF, please put them on. You know, this is a social work tool for social workers, and unless you tell us what you want or what you think of it, we can't move forward. Okay, well we can move forward, but we want to get as many views as possible, but not in a formal process. Okay, is everybody okay with that? So we'll move swiftly on. Just if I do that, you see people do it. If I leave it on the table and go away, nobody does it. So thank you very much for your time on that. Okay, so that's the PCF. So we've talked about the HCPC. We have to have that to register. We believe the PCF is the framework which is the start and goes through your career. So we jumped over those 2 hurdles. We've got registration. We've got scripts of the PCF. We know what that is. And now we come to the knowledge and skills statements. Right, who's familiar with the knowledge and skills statements? Okay. Come on, hands up. Okay. Okay, I'm not going to tell you all about them. I certainly can I can signpost you to papers or information or etc. This is enormous stuff. And as you hear the conversations go on, you realise how significant these are. So in March 2015, Chief Social Workers released, I have to say that their children and families. Oh God, we've got loads. Right, the children. I'll just rush through these now. You can have these afterwards. These slides anyway. But the Chief Social Workers, primarily led by the children and families Chief Social Worker, produced a list of statements. Not got those here, I'm not going to go through them, but you must look at them. They were out for consultation, very little change, I have to say, through that consultation process, but they are there. And their knowledge and skills statements and their skills needed for specific area of work, and they're designed to strengthen and enhance the PCF. And the KSS at the moment, there's one for adults and there's one for children and families, or a child and family social worker. And those 2 are now out. There is one we've just consulted on, another one coming out on achieving permanence. So there is a question like, when's this going to stop? How many KSSs are we going to have, etc., etc. But they're out there. And more important, not more important, but this isn't just a set of statements that all students, all ASYEs, all practitioners will be expected to evidence. It's also about the new role, which is the Approved Child and Family Practitioner status, which is what the government, the Chief Social Worker, Nikki Morgan, are saying is needed to improve child protection. So frontline social workers will be looking towards being Approved Child and Family Practitioner. I'm going to go through these. Right, so the accreditation to be, now I'm just trying to give you an overall of this. Some people have actually been piloted and they believe that this is a good thing because they feel proud and they're able to show that they're capable and they see it as another bonus to their professional career. So I'm not going to be particularly negative on it. Child and family social workers only at present. We do think adults, there's pressure on adults to use social workers to look at how they're going to develop their profession. There's a DFE rollout and pilots are being evaluated. We know that there was, I think, so many hundreds in Birmingham and different local authorities who volunteered to start this testing process so that they could get some feedback. I put what is statutory social work because the idea was that every statutory social worker on the front line would do that. We have, I can't go through everything now, but we have grave concerns about the PVI, people in the voluntary sector, people in the private sector, other areas of social work where we know social work is growing and how these will fit into this model. And the consequences of that, and we already know that if you go through the accreditation and you are not successful in passing the accreditation, you are still a registered social worker, so there's this sort of joke that you may then just go to adults. So you can imagine that adult services are very thrilled about that concept. So I've just got this from Community Care briefly, and it's an old one, but I just like the road bit because it shows you what will happen. So in this testing, and we're still calling it testing, you have to have your employer endorses you. And I went to workshop, they're still looking at how this develops. They haven't decided when this will happen. My biggest question was the expectation for students to go to ASYE and then be an accredited practitioner. If you look at the knowledge skills statements, I certainly wouldn't have been competent and confident in those skills as a newly qualified social worker, having gone through ASYE. That's my personal view. So we are concerned, BASRA is concerned about when this is going to be expected, and that hasn't been decided, so watch this space. So, I think post 2 years, yeah, you would be expected to, but it's about child protection and frontline things. So, employer puts you forward, says, oh, John, Freddie, Johnny, whatever, is brilliant, they're going to do the test. A test is a digital test online. You do this digital test, I think it takes about an hour, and once you pass that, you then move on to another test, which is at the moment an online scenario where you see actors and you have to input what you think would happen, etc. They are talking, I don't know if you're going to talk more about this or not. No, because they are talking about simulated having actors actually physically in an assessment centre. It's quite big stuff, this is. So regional assessment centres, for instance, with a team of actors who are going to portray, you have to do service users, and then you'll be assessed. Okay. I'm sorry to rush all through this, but then if you pass that, when you pass that, you'll go on to then become accredited. They've taken out, thank goodness, the essay stage. There won't be an essay, but it's a process. It's not confirmed how it's going to happen. The DFE at the meeting on Friday said very clearly they will be funding local authorities to set this up, which is such a relief because there's no way they would be able to do it. But how long that will be, how much they'll do that. So there were directors there saying, we're not sure how we're going to do this. Okay. Have to say very quickly the changes to regulation. I'm going to skip on to this about the legislation because I did mention this previously. There is a bill and it's almost like a skeleton. It's got very little content, and we are spending a huge time, energy inputting into this because we're so concerned. It ranges from a really positive approach to children leaving care. So it's got a big thing about supporting all care leavers. It's got a big thing about permanence, which is refreshing rather than just adoption. So there are some really good positives in there. But within it, there are two major areas that we're concerned about. Well, there's three. There's a big area about safeguarding and having national panels to look at safeguarding, looking at issues where a child or I presume it will be associated to children. So when a child's had an injury or died, the national panel may look at that, but there's an issue about how they would select which reviews they're looking at. Would it be failing authorities, some political issues there, and very unclear about what they intend to do with this national panel, who would sit on it, etc. Clauses 15 to 19, they are stating that they can change present legislation, they can ignore or adapt present legislation, which is the 1989 Children Act, something like that, to test new ways of working. That causes us huge concerns. That's about, are we going to lose all the stuff we fought for children's rights in that act, all the issues about family, what's going to happen. So the Secretary of State, whoever that be, makes that decision. So it's a political decision on issues of children and families. And the other significant one, of course, is the new regulator. We are extremely concerned about this. The concept is they're going to set up a new regulator for social work, but they're going to say there has to be a new regulator. We believe the government is going to set that up. That is, it sounds like a party political broadcast, but it's concerning that no other profession has government control over their regulator. It should be independent, and we're extremely concerned. That regulator, we presume, will be doing regulation of students, which may be welcome. It will be looking at whether ASYE is mandatory. I think it will be looking whether approved child and family is part of that. They'll be looking at the social work education as a whole, looking at the fast tracks as well as the existing programmes. So huge concerns. If you see, we've got a plea out at the moment, please just look at these clauses and give us your views from the front line, from how it is when you're working. I know you're really busy and I know it's hard, but these are changes that are happening to us. We're not involved in them. We're trying hard to be involved, but we're not. I don't think I've got much time for this. Who knows about the standards for employers of social workers? Every employer has to meet these standards. They're, again, essentially important. They're not mandatory, but if you've got issues about any of these, I pulled these two out because David already said to me there were concerns here about workloads and what's happening in the future. Those are 2 out of the 8 standards that they have, and there's a reference there for you to use those. And you can use that by saying to the managers, etc., are we meeting the standards for employees? I bet your managers probably won't know about them either, but shout about them. They are in existence. The local government authority have supervision of those, and they're extremely important. Use them. And I just wanted to end by saying, just look after yourself. Think about joining BASWA or the Social Work Union, both of us. And good luck. Sounds a bit, I've just rammed you there, and I feel really bad about that, but we'll have questions, and that, I presume we've got no time for that now, so if we let Siobhan, perhaps it'll be time after Siobhan for a quick questions for either of us. And we're both around all day, aren't we? Right, thank you.